So, part 9, we have already spoken about many civilizations, and we have started speaking about the early Greek civilization. And by speaking about the early Greek civilization, I have mentioned a lot of civilizations and states within that civilization. So, today we are countering some new topic, which is the Greek war with Persia. Have you heard about the Greek war with Persia before?
No.
The what?
The Greek war with Persia.
Oh,
Actually, we have had a hint about that in the first semester when we studied the Persian civilization.
There is sound, teacher.
What?
There is sound.
What? So, can you remember the Persian civilization that we have already studied in the first semester while we spoke about Darius the First or Darius the Great?
With Darius, they have prosperity and good.
Yep.
With Darius the First.
Yes, they have wealth and they expanded to many territories, including to parts of Europe, and they countered the Greek civilization at that time. So, to speak about the Greek war with Persia, we need to figure out that some civilizations just try to invade others by conquering them or having conquest with them. Can you read, please, Iyad?
Yes. 1 second. Greek wars with Persia. In 500 BC, Greek world was small. It included hundreds of rival city-states in a small area at the tip of the Balkan Peninsula, and a growing number of Greek colonies scattered around the Mediterranean. The Greeks, as you have read, were often bitterly divided. Athens, the wealthiest Greek city-state, had rivals that bitterly resented their rich neighbor. But far more powerful than any Greek state was the huge Persian Empire. That any Greek state was that lay to the east, just across the Aegean Sea. When the Persians threatened them, the Greeks briefly put aside their differences to defend their freedom. The Persians had conquered a huge empire stretching from Asia Minor to border of India. Their subjects included the Greek city-states of Ionia in Asia Minor, though under Persian rule, those Ionian city-states were largely self-governing. Still, they resented their situation. In 499 BC, Ionian Greeks rebelled against Persian rule. Athens sent ships to help them. As the historian Herodotus wrote some years later, those ships were the beginning of mischief both to the Greeks and to the barbarians. They triggered the Wars, a series of wars that landed on and off for half a century.
Alright, so simply we're speaking about that in the year 500, the Greek world was so small because simply they were divided into some city-states. Those city-states were often divided and separated from one another, regarded to some natural features like the natural barriers and other features that some city-states felt superior to other city-states in the early Greek civilization. So there was a simple or a very low number or a small number of states in Persia and some great colonies that they started to make along the Aegean and Mediterranean Sea. Later on, they were bitterly divided. None was connected to each other. The only event that they will come counter each other was the Olympic Games. Later on, they countered the threat, which was the huge Persian Empire. Of course, this threat led to to the something that has never happened before in the early Greek civilization, which is that once they counter that threat, the Greeks briefly they put aside all their differences, put aside everything that they had not in common, and they just started to defend their freedom and their city states and their also civilization. So once the Greek civilization countered the Persian invasion, they put aside their differences and they started fighting together. Of course, the Persians themselves had conquered a huge empire stretched from Asia Minor to the borders of India. If you can recall about Darius the First or Darius the Great, once he stretched to very, very vast areas. Though under Persian rule, those Ionian city-states were largely self-governance. Still, they resented their situation. And one triggered, the only thing that triggered the war between the early Greek people and the Persian Empire was that because in the year 499, the Ionian Greeks rebelled against the Persian people, and thus the Athens sent them some help. And this what triggered the whole war that lasted for half a century between Greek and Persia. So Athens sent the Ionian people some help, resembled in the ships. So they sent them some ships to help them defeat the Persian. Consequently, these ships were the beginning of a mischief to both the Greeks and also the barbarians of the Persian Empire. They triggered the Persian Wars, and that war lasted for half a century. Again, shall I repeat again?
No, thank you.
No, good.
Yes, teacher.
Or
Repeat.
No, repeat one more time, please.
Okay, no.
The next one.
So let's just now we have studied about the early Greek city-states, right? We studied about Sparta and we studied about Athens, right? And we said that because the Spartan people felt superior, they were not equal to non-Spartan people or the non-citizens. And they even went so far with their ego that the Sparta stood alone apart from other city-states. They shut themselves and they banned anyone from leaving the city, right? And later we studied about the Athens, and we saw how the Athens treated themselves also in superiority, and they saw the Spartan women as they were having some sort of freedom that must be given only for men. So they saw that they were not good, and their men, of course, did not have the ability to treat their women as equal to the women in Athens. We have Solon presented some things for them, some reforms, and all of this. And despite all what happens, not ever a city-state countered another city-state for anything. They did not come together. Each city-state was only in a isolated natural feature and also their ego. The only event that they will come counter each other and come close to each other was the Olympic Games. So far, so good. So they will not join unless at the season of the Olympic Games. They will come to the Valley of Olympia and all of them will start honoring their gods and goddesses. So far, so good.
Yes. So they wouldn't come unless there is Olympic Games.
Yes. Otherwise, they will be shut or isolated in their cities, or even if they went to trade with another city, the people of the city will feel superior to the non-citizen of the cities. Okay?
Okay.
All right. But once they countered a threat, which was Persia. As the Persian, they sent their troops to the Greek people. And of course, what was the reason of that war, or why did they went there? So we will just come to that point. But first, once the Persian people started to invade the Greek people, the Greeks briefly put aside all their differences, all their superiority or their ego, everything. They just put that aside. And they started defending their kingdom and their place, and also their freedom. Okay? So now we don't say you are Persian and I'm Athenian, I'm from Attica and you are from the peninsula of somewhat or somewhere. All of us speak Greek, all of us are Greek people, all of us must stand for our freedom. That's it.
So even Sparta come together.
Yes,
But
Spartan.
everyone else.
No, the Spartan, they made something amazing. We will speak about that in a few moments.
So they didn't join everyone else.
Not everyone joined, but at
And-
first, okay, you are just exceeding the events. So I'll just tell you. So at first, when the Persian came, Spartan refused to take act in the war. All of the Spartan army refused to do that, except for 300 brave soldiers, along with their warrior king, Leonidas. Okay, their king Leonidas, along with 300 of his best men, stood alone in the face of 1 million Persian soldiers. So you can see the odds. And actually, they were very successful in stopping them for a very long time. But eventually, number conquers bravery. So they all died. And this triggered the 100,000 of Spartan warriors joined the war in the name of their king Leonidas. We will speak about this in a moment. But first, what we need to know is that the Greek people, they put aside their differences and their ego and their isolation, and all of them stood together to defend their freedom. But the question is, why there was a war between Persia and the Greek city-states? It was simple, because in Asia Minor, we have some people called the Ionian. The city-state, it was a Greek city-state of Ionia. This city-state, unfortunately, fell to the conquest and the conquer and invasion of the Persian army. Athens, okay, as a Greek city-state, so they send them some help. So they send some ships to help the Ionian people. The Persians saw that as an insult. You are insulting us. You are sending help to those whom we are conquering. Are you crazy? What are you doing? These people now are under our invasion, and you are trying to help them by providing them ships. So these ships like triggered a war between the Persian and the Greeks. And of course, the Persian did not see Athens or the Athenians as just one city-state, but they saw them as Greek people. So you are defending us. You are sending help to our to the people whom we invaded. So I'm gonna conquer all of you. The Persian also had that sort of ego. So they started to trigger a war between them, and that war lasted for half a century. So far, so good.
Yes, but 50 years, how they get enough people?
Well, the Persian had an army of 1 million soldiers, and we're speaking about 500 BC. Just imagine the number, 500 BC. That's approximately 2.5 centuries, or 2 centuries and 600 years, 2,000 years, sorry, 2,600 years ago. And they had an army of 1 million soldiers. Come on. That's why we call him Darius the Great. We do not
Bruh.
call him Darius the Great for nothing. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
1 million. How? What was their population?
No, a lot. Because they conquered people. And once they conquer some place, like for example, Persia conquered the Mesopotamian civilization. So they will take the people from the Mesopotamian civilization and include them into their army. So now, as a Persian king, okay, I have conquered your city. All the men in your city will become warriors in my army. Otherwise, I'm gonna kill each and last one in your city. Females, children, elders, everyone will die. So you must fight my wars. That was the way it is back then. Okay? So the population always grow. Any questions so far?
No.
All right. So at one time, Athens wins at marathon. So let's see. Just before we jump to that point, we need to understand that the Persian started to march towards the Greek city-states, and all of the Greek city-states put aside their differences and started to defend their freedoms. And what triggered that was the Ionian city-state, because once the Persian invaded it, Athens sent ships to help them. These ships triggered the war between the Persian Empire and the Greek civilization. So, Athens wins at Marathon. Who wants to read?
Me.
Okay.
From Athens wins at marathon, right?
Yeah, Athens wins at Marathon.
Athens. Athens wins at marathon. The Persians soon crushed the rebel cities of Ionia. Sorry for the noise. But Persian Emperor Darius the First was furious at the role Athens had played in the uprising. In time, Darius sent a huge force across the Aegean to punish Athens for its interference. The mighty Persian army landed near Marathon, a plain north of Athens, in 490 BC. The Persians greatly outnumbered Athenian forces, yet the invaders were amazed to see the mere handful of men coming at a run without either horsemen or archers. The Persians responded with a rain of arrows, but the Greeks rushed onward. They broke through the Persian line and engaged in fierce hand-to-hand combat. Whoa. Overwhelmed by the fury of the Athenian assault, the Persians hastily retreated to their ships. The Athenians celebrated their triumph. Still, the Athenian leader Themistocles knew the victory at Marathon had brought only a temporary lull in the fighting. He urged Athenians to build a fleet of warships and prepare other defenses.
So, once again, once the Persian people felt insulted by the Athenians, once they sent the ships for the Union people, so the Persians soon started to crush repelled cities of Ionia after the Athenians sent them some ships. And the Persian Emperor Darius I, he was furious that the Athenian people or the city of Athens have played some role in that rebellion, because if they haven't sent the people, the Ionia city or the people of the Ionian, the ships, they would not have rebelled. So you helped them in their rebellion against our army. So he felt furious from that, and he just wanted to just have his revenge. So he sent a huge force across the Eurasian Sea to punish Athens for its interference in his rule or in his city that he has already conquered. And of course, now the Persian greatly outnumbered the Athenian. The Persian really had a very great army. So, what can we do, guys? What can we act in this situation? They are outnumbering us, and we cannot do anything. No tactique, no formation, nothing can help to stand those people. So what's this? Let's just fight them. Fight for your freedom, fight for your land, fight for your wife, for your child, fight for everything that you hold control of, that you love. So the Athenians actually they made something very strange that the Persian went just amazed by it. They just rush into the battle bare-handed, nothing but a sword in their hand, and they just went directly toward the Persian people. So overwhelmed by the fury of the Athenian assault, the Persian hesitantly retreated to their ships as they found out that those people are fighting and they are not afraid. They just want to die or having their freedoms or die, nothing else. So they were overwhelmed by that. So they retreated to the ships. Of course, their leader, which was a very, very talented guy, and he was a very smart one, Themistocles, he just knew that this victory, this triumph, is a temporary one. It will not ever last. So simply, we need to do something. We need to put a plan so that we can defend ourselves in the future. And he urged the Athenians to build a fleet of ships, okay, in order to prepare other defenses for the Persian people. And this was a very important point, actually, that helped later in the defeat of the Persian. So again, Themistocles urged the Athenians to build a fleet of warships so that he can prepare for further fights and defeat the Persian people. Okay, so once again, Persia invaded Ionian city-state. Athens sent them some ships. The Persian king felt insulted and furious by that, so he marched towards Athens. By that, they met at a place called Marathon. There, in that place, the Athenian people they just started fighting with huge courage. The Persians were overwhelmed by that, and they retreated to their ships. Themistocles asked them and urged them to build a fleet of warships to help in other defenses or to defeat the Persian later. So far, so good. Step by step.
Yes, so far so good.
Nawaf, so far, so good.
Teacher, my
Yes, teacher.
internet went out. Who felt what? Okay, nothing. I forgot.
Okay, yeah.
Teacher,
Yes.
I know that the Persian go through to the Ionian. Then Athens helped
Yes.
Ionian, and Athens defeated and win
The
at
first.
Marathon
Yes.
and defeated Persian. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So Ionian first were gone under the occupation or the invasion of the Persian people, and as a city-state in the early Greek civilization, Athens helped them by sending them some ships. Of course, the king or the emperor Darius I, he felt insulted that the Athenian people are helping the Ionians one. So he first crushed the rebellion in the Ionian people or in the city of Ionia, and later he started to march to Athens. He of course sent some troops, not all of his army. He sent some troops to crush the people in the city of Athens. Unfortunately, they met at a place called Marathon, and in that place, the Athenians were led by Themistocles. Themistocles, he was a very intelligent man, and he just urged them to a fierce hand-to-hand combat. So the Persians were overwhelmed, and they retreated to their ships. So Themistocles, he was smart, and he asked the Athenian people to build a fleet of warships so that they can defeat the Persian in further fights. Okay?
Yes, good.
All right. Later, after that defeat, of course, in the year 480, Darius's son, his son, Deuxis. Oh, this man, he was so much more than his father in his ego. He had that ego that no one in the world is like him. He was the king of all kings, and he was nothing. There is no one in the world that could be just compared to him. So he actually was so superior to all other people because of his ego. So, this
Teacher,
man,
you're lagging.
hello.
No,
Okay, good,
Salim
good.
is lagging, not you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So again, Darius' son, whose name was Xerxes, he sent much larger force to conquer Greece. By the time Athens had persuaded Sparta and other city-states to join the fight against Persia. By that time, okay, at the time of Darius' son, all of the city-states of early Greek civilization joined forces together in order to face the Persian. So once again, the Persian landed in the northern Greece. And here comes the most important
Must
point.
have been a massacre.
Yep. At that time, okay, once in 800 in 480, once Darius' son Xerxes, he sent some troops, and now he sent 1,000,000 soldiers. He sent all of his troops right now to conquer all the city-states of the early Greek civilization. By that time, okay, Sparta did not take act in the war yet. Sparta was still isolated. Okay, we will help you once the dangerous is great, but right now we will not help you right now. We will not start to gather our troops and our armies right now. So we are isolated that no one can conquer us. We are the Spartan, we are the superior, we, blah, 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 blah. But of course, their king, who was a very, very smart one, Leonidas. So Leonidas, he knew that this imminent threat was a very dangerous one. So, along with 300 other Spartan, a very small group of Spartan people, only 300 Spartan managed to stay and to center at a narrow mountain pass, the mountain Thermopylae. At that pass, okay, all the 300 used the phalanx technique and they stopped and had their centers. For days and days, they started fighting one legion after one legion from the Persian army and defeating them. And they stood control and they held their place for many, many days. That their warrior king Leonidas Xerxes, the Darius' son, he offered him just leave them and come and I'll make you my right hand. I make you conquer all of Europe. I'll make you the best warrior in the whole world. Just join my forces. Of course, Leonidas, he just threw away his offer and he stood by his men, but unfortunately they were outnumbered and all of the 300 that were killed. And this was the spark that illuminated the Spartan soldiers to join the fight. After that fight of the 300 Spartan soldier, all of the city-states of Greek were joined under the leadership of the Spartan warriors and they conquered the Persian once and for all. Not only that, yet they marched to Asia Minors and they followed the Persian and conquered and invaded them once again. So, I need someone to read, please. Brahim, perhaps.
Yes. Okay.
Greek city-states joined together.
What?
Greek city-states joined together.
We have 2 minutes. Make it topic.
Okay. In 480 BC, Darius' son Xerxes sent a much large force to conquer Greece. By this time, Athens had persuaded Sparta and other city-states to join in the fight against Persia. Once again, the Persian landed in northern Greece. A small Spartan force guarded the narrow mountain pass at Ther- Therm- Therma- Thermali- Thermalides. The Spartan held no, Thermali, led by their great war king Leonidas. The Spartans held out heroically against the enormous Persian force, but were defeated in the end. The Persians marched south and burned Athens. The city was empty, however, the Athenians had already withdrawn to safety, putting their faith in the fleet of ships that Themistocles had urged them to build. The Athenians lured.
So remember when Themistocles asked them to build a fleet? Now they have already left their city, Athens, and put their faith in the fleet of ships that they have already built. Of course, the Athenians lured the Persian fleet into the narrow strait of Salamis near Athens. Their Athenian warship rammed, parried, and burned, and sank the Persian fleet from the shore. Of course, the Greeks watched helplessly. The next year, the Greeks defeated the Persians on land in Asia Minor. The victory marked the end of the Persian invasion. In a brief moment of unity, the Greek city-states had saved themselves from the Persian threat. So actually, they joined together. They made all of this just because of a spark of a minor group of warriors of the Spartan warrior 300, and they were turned into a movie, by the way, an excellent one. So, any questions so far?
I have one.
Yes.
Who won, teacher, at the end?
Yes.
One at the end, the Greek city-states joined together and they defeated the Persian invasion.
Where is Asia Minor, teacher?
In the Mesopotamian civilization.
Is it a continent? An old one?
Yep. We are speaking about 500 BC.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Have a nice day, great night, and see you tomorrow.